Welcome again to another edition of Creative Conversations with Dr. C. I am so happy to see you all and just can't wait to start this podcast. Today is a very special podcast. I met this gentleman when I was doing the Black History Literary Weekend that was hosted by Dr. Rhonda Lawson. And this gentleman actually, I met him at Barnes and Nobles, and he was interested in the conversation that we had as authors, talking about our journey as authors. And so we got the opportunity to talk, but I'm not going to spill the beans on all that good stuff. I'm going to let him talk about that, but I'm excited about bringing this gentleman on, Mr. Solon Phillips. He has a story to tell, and I want you guys to hear it. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Mr. Solon on, and so that he can tell his story about his journey and into authorship. So I'm going to bring him on. Well, hello, sir. How are you?
Oh, how are you doing? I'm doing great today.
I am doing great too. I was just telling the audience just a little bit. I didn't want to do that spoiler alert. I wanted to let you be able to talk about your journey. I was telling them that I had the opportunity to meet you back in February when I was a part of the Black History Literary Weekend that was hosted by Dr. Rhonda Lawson, and we met at a Barnes and Noble, and we were doing a chat about, it was not just me, it was several other authors that were on the panel, and we were talking about our journey. And so I'm going to let you kind of talk about what were you doing in Barnes and Noble, and what sparked you to actually come to Barnes and Noble, and then we'll talk about a little bit more about that interaction.
Yeah, so I had heard about it. Someone had sent me an invite that Dr. Lawson was having this Black History book festival or whatever it was that at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I actually spoke to Dr. Lawson, and she sent me the information, and I went out, and I'm so glad that I did.
Yeah, it was a wonderful mix of authors on the panel, from children book authors to really inspirational authors. It was Christian-based authors there. It was a really good mix of people, but it allowed people to actually get the opportunity to hear our stories as authors. But our relationship kind of blossomed out of that. And now I can easily say now with confidence that you are now one of the newer members, newer family members of Allure Publishing. So I am grateful to say that to everybody, that you're a part of our team now, a part of our family. So kudos to you, and thank you for joining the family. But today's conversation is about our collaboration and this book that you are reintroducing to the world, right?
Yes,
and so it's called what? What's the name of the book?
The Adventures of Uncle Billy and Ross, Life Lessons Made Simple.
Yes. So it was when we actually talked, and we had the opportunity to meet at the brunch, because you actually came to the brunch. Yes. And we had that's how we kind of met and started this collaboration, and I had the opportunity to take the book home that Friday, and we communicated the next morning, and I was like, yeah, this is a great book, and I'm really enjoying the fact that you have these simple lessons that people can gravitate to. And so and that's how our relationship actually was built on, from that brunch to now. So um let's talk about the book. Let's talk about what's inside the book. And then we got a little bit of a surprise for our audience toward the end of this conversation, because it's a little bit different now. Some of the things that we see initially, because this is a re-release of the book, because you were under another publishing house. So it's a new vision that we sat down and talked about, and what you wanted to see different about the book. So, but we're going to talk a little bit about some of the key chapters in these different lessons that you're talking about, that Uncle Billy has with Ross. So set it up for us and just kind of like walk us through that relationship, and then we'll start talking about the different chapters in the
Sure.
book.
Sure. So Uncle Billy and Ross is it's short stories. Uncle Billy is an older gentleman who I actually knew a guy. Uncle Billy is named after a guy that I met who was kind of country, but had many words of wisdom to offer. Kind of a
Mhm.
funny guy. When I was writing him, when I was writing the character, because it's a back and forth dialogue, to get myself in the mind frame, I thought of a Samuel L. Jackson.
Mm.
And so, as a writer, sometimes you get into the mindset of who your character is. So as I'm writing, I'm thinking, okay, Samuel L. Jackson all the way. And even today, sometimes I'll read the book and I'll just be laughing myself silly. Even if I'm the only person who laughs at this, I'm happy. But when I go back and read it, Samuel L. Jackson slash Uncle Billy, he's offering words of wisdom to his nephew, who is Ross.
Mhm.
Ross is a 13-year-old kid who he doesn't live with his uncle. He just goes to his uncle's house every day after school because his uncle lives in a school district where his mom wants him to go to school. Where he lives, he's not allowed to go to that particular school. So his mother uses her brother's address so Ross can go there. So every day after school, Ross goes home to Uncle Billy, and then his mom comes and he picks him up from Uncle Billy's house and takes him home. So
Mhm.
during that small window of time, from the time the bus drops him off to the time his mom picks him up, Uncle Billy is sharing words of wisdom, nuggets, life lessons that I've learned much later in life than had I learned when I was younger. Oh man, I'd be so much further along. And
Mm.
so the whole idea is to teach these lessons to younger people. And when I say younger people, it could be as young as 12, 13, all the way up to your 20s. I've gotten so much feedback from people who are saying, I'm applying some of these lessons to my own life and I'm seeing a difference. So that's the backstage. That's why I wrote it. These lessons come from people like Napoleon Hill, Earl Nightingale, the Bible, Shakespeare. It's a deep lessons, but they're simplified in a
Mhm.
way that younger people could understand.
Makes sense. I think we kind of get away from those life lessons. And I always say, you're never too old to learn things, because if you're not learning, you're stagnant.
Yep.
So I was just really pleased when I was able to read just the first few chapters of the book when you gave it to me. And I was like, wow, this is so simple. But it was hilarious. It was like I can envision myself as a young girl at my grandmother's house, and
Mhm.
I'm listening to Big Mama talk in this shotgun house, and these lessons are just wholesome, but they were meaningful, right? And they stuck with me. And so I was so glad to be able to see it from the point of view of a young male, having those conversations with an older gentleman who can provide him a sense of direction. Because really, as we look at today's world, we are so far gone. This world is just,
Yeah.
it's just crazy, right? So just to have something so wholesome and so that's connecting to a male, an older male, and a younger person, a younger boy, to giving him those life lessons is amazing. So I truly, truly enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So
And
let's,
and Ross is witty. It's his
yes.
character too. He's a young, witty teenager. He's speaking in the way a teenager would speak. When I was writing it, I was speaking to a lot of 12 and 13-year-olds to try to get into that mindset of how they think and how they talk.
Mhm.
So it's a fun read, but then it's also an educational read.
Yeah, having realistic expectations of understanding that you're putting yourself in the position of these young people so it can be relatable. Because
Yeah,
if it's not relatable, they're not going to read it. I'm like, they don't know what they're talking about,
exactly.
right?
Exactly.
So, um, I want to kind of dive into the book just a little bit. I don't want you to give too much away, but just enough for people to kind of like, oh, you know what, that makes sense. So let's look at chapter one. So chapter
Chapter
one,
one, yeah.
yeah. So chapter one talks about lessons on appreciation. What was that thought process?
Yes. So appreciation. People, as we go through life, we have two choices. We could either focus on the things that bother us, or we could focus on the things that encourage us or the good things in our life. Every human being alive has good things and bad things.
Mhm,
Right? There's a quote by Shakespeare that says, "Nothing is either good or bad. Thinking makes it so." So, however you want to see something and think about it will determine whether or not what it really is.
mhm,
So, in this particular chapter, Uncle Billy is teaching Ross to focus on the good things that are in your life, opposed to focusing on the bad things. And
mhm,
once when you start focusing on the good things, you then become appreciative of it. Everybody listening has something in their life that they should appreciate, whether you can see, whether you can taste, walk, if you have a job, whatever.
mhm,
And this lesson is about focusing on those things and watch those things enlarge. And there's another saying that says, whatever you focus on grows. If you're focusing on all the bad things, oh, I don't have a good job, oh, my I'm overweight, oh, if you're focusing on that, you're going to get more of that.
mhm,
So the lesson that Uncle Billy is teaching Ross in his own way is focus on the good things. Be appreciative of all the good things in your life and watch what happens.
mm. Such a mouthful. I think we take for granted just the little things and
Yeah.
just being appreciative of those little things because somebody could be so much worse off than you are. So
Yeah.
being appreciative is such a big thing. Gratitude is such a
Yes.
big thing.
Yes. Gratitude. It could be called a gratitude too. Exactly
Yeah.
right.
So chapter two talks on lessons about the power of thought. I really, really like that chapter. I
Oh, yeah.
really
Yes.
like
Now that was a little more difficult to write because that is such a deep topic.
that. Mm,
And the power of thought. And I think most people don't realize how powerful our thoughts are. So Uncle Billy is giving little Ross an exercise to do. And readers, when you read this chapter, you can do the same exercise that actually helps you get in tune of what you're thinking. What you think about actually, there's a saying, as a man thinketh, so is he. There's so many different sayings
mhm,
about that. But the lesson that Uncle Billy gives to Ross puts things in perspective for every individual. It
mhm,
really helps them to get in tune to, what am I thinking about? Wow, I didn't realize I thought about this thing so much. And once when you get to a point where you can literally control your thoughts,
mhm.
then you can start controlling your life. And
Yes.
that's the lesson behind chapter 2.
Yeah, I actually had the opportunity. I read that chapter like two or three times. Like I really had to really dig deep. And when you say this book is for people between the ages of 12 and 20, I think this book is really ageless in a sense because yes, it's great that you have this kind of parameters of your target area, but I think that this book is ageless. I think these topics that you're talking about fits everybody's lifestyle or any age really. But I actually had the opportunity to read that about three times, and I'm like, oh my god, like maybe I felt like I was missing something. Then I was like, then I thought about it. It says the power of thought. Why are you overthinking it? It
Mm,
is actually what it is. And
yeah.
so I was like, oh, like that light bulb came on, like, da-da-da-da. Oh, okay, I got it now. So I really enjoyed that chapter. So chapter 3,
Chapter 3. What's the title? Chapter 3 again?
it's actually called The Lessons on Choosing Friends. I talk to my kids about this
Mm,
so often. We throw that word around, friends, too freely. And so this one was a eye opener. I felt like, man, I say this all the time to my kids, and I think they think I'm crazy. Maybe they need to read it from a perspective of somebody else because it's just not me.
right, right. This is very important because who you choose to associate yourself with is has a direct impact on the trajectory of your life.
Mhm.
If you're hanging around, they say, if you're hanging around rich people, you're going to be rich. If you're hanging around fit people, you're going to be fit. Whoever you're hanging around with, that's who you're going to become later in life. So
Mhm.
it's so important for you to choose, analyze the people who you're with. Like, who am I hanging around with? What are they doing?
Mhm.
Are they
Mhm.
studying? Are they skipping school? Are they hanging out drinking all the time? What are they doing?
Mhm.
Because this is what I'm going to be doing with them. Birds of a feather flock together.
That's it.
So
That's
that chapter is, and that could go for adults too.
mhm.
As old as I am, I have to be careful of who I choose to spend the majority of my time with because they're going to have an influence on me.
Yeah, that's true. And actually, you know what? I missed that was actual chapter 1, 2, 3, 4. That was actual chapter 5. I actually missed chapter 2, which was the lesson on reputation. I'm sorry. Uh,
Okay. All right.
so reputation, I guess
Rep-
it goes hand in hand. Maybe that it might have did it on purpose because it goes hand in hand with choosing your friends and reputation.
yep.
So,
Yep. Reputation is interesting because Ross comes home from school and he's upset because people are talking about him and he's concerned about his reputation.
mhm,
And Uncle Billy, who he's even though he's country, he was in the military and he's well traveled. So
mhm,
he actually does this Shakespeare quote from memory for
mhm,
for little Ross. And Ross like laughs at him because he says he sounds like Idris Elba because he
mhm,
gives him the British accent. But
mhm,
the lesson there is about how you can protect your reputation. And
mhm,
I won't give the keys here, get the book, but it teaches you how you really can protect your reputation. Reputation is important as how people view you, but
mhm.
there's a way that you can protect it. There's certain things that you can do. And Uncle Billy does a really good job in teaching young
Yeah.
Ross about that.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off that, I always tell my children the only thing that you have in this life is your name and your word.
Yeah.
And so I think being able to put those all together with your friends and the reputation and making sure people understand who you are and what you represent and how you present yourself to the world it plays a big impact on your life going forward. So I always think like, man, you keep saying the same thing over and over. I'm gonna keep saying it until I'm in the grave. So
Yeah.
until you understand that lesson, then you'll when you come back and tell me, you know what, mom, you were right, then I'll be okay. Then I'll be like,
Right.
okay,
Right.
my job is done, right?
Yes, that the quote that Uncle Billy tells him is from Othello, if we have any Shakespeare lovers, and it's when he says, "Your good name is the immediate jewel of the soul." I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Good name is the immediate jewel of the soul. You have to have a good name. Sometimes it's out of your hands,
Mm-hmm.
but I won't get into it, but read the chapter and you would see how you can protect that immediate jewel of your soul.
Yeah. Very it's good stuff, guys. You definitely need to pick it up. Good stuff, good stuff. The next chapter you have in here is talking about lessons on Black history.
Yes, that was an interesting one because um, Ross is young, Uncle
Mm,
Billy is old, and Black history, as older people view it, might be a little different than the way younger people view it. And
mhm,
there's a lot of Black history that younger people don't know. And
mhm,
Uncle Billy is teaching him about some of this. This chapter is actually really, really deep. And for some, they might pick up on it because there's an exchange. Uncle Billy is telling young Ross about how, for example, the Negro spirituals are the true American music because it was the first music actually started in America.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, young Ross is like shocked about that. You know, they talk about Michael Jackson, and you know, there's a history between he was dark and he was light. But uh,
Mm-hmm.
there's a part where they talk about the N word,
Mm-hmm.
and the perception that Uncle Billy has is different than the perception that Ross has.
Mm-hmm.
And they try to explain it to each other, and it's like left in the air. So readers could walk away with their own interpretation of what just happened there.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of symbolism in chapter 5.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's chapter 5. Yeah. So
Is
yeah,
chapter 5. Yep, it's chapter 5.
it's interesting because when people from other ethnicities read it, they have a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And when African Americans read it, it's a deep chapter, but it's a
Mm-hmm.
very filled with education about, you know, about food, you know, chitlins, some of the, because you're from the South, right? You're from,
My family is from the South. Yes, my family is from Mississippi.
oh,
Yes.
yeah. So you probably know a lot about this.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
I
So
was
a
go
lot of
ahead.
people don't know about some of the history of the slave times and what was going on.
Hmm. And I think we need to um, ensure that we give that to our children so that they won't be lost. Because the things that they're being taught in school is not even a fraction of what our history is. And so I was glad to see that this was something in the book, so that people can really have the opportunity to kind of dig a little bit deeper and not always say, well, you know what, that's what they're teaching me in school and that's all I need to know. No, that's not all you need to know. And yes, I am from the South. Wasn't born in the South, but my family is from the South. And I tell people when I used to go home to visit my grandma, um, just the air smelled different in the South. It was
Mm,
a different smell versus coming from the city. But yeah, such rich history that was built in the South, and
yeah.
a lot of trauma came from the South, but a lot of good history and a lot of good food. Uh,
Mhm.
uh, Eaten at home with Big Mama. So yes, I'm glad that this was a part of the book, and that we need to continue to make sure that our history is not lost, that we're continuously pushing it out there so people can see it.
Yep.
And so the other one was about lessons on attitude.
Attitude said to be the most important word in the
Mm.
dictionary.
Yeah.
This chapter teaches, Uncle Billy is teaching Ross about how to just have, how to correct your attitude. Your attitude truly determines your altitude. I think someone said, you know,
Mhm.
if you have a bad outlook on life, that's the way you're going to go. If you have a great outlook on life, that's the route you're going to take. And he tells him a little story. I won't get into the story, but the story perfectly displays how your attitude in life, how you look at everything,
Mhm.
will determine whether you're a successful person or not.
Mhm.
So many people, adults, they need attitude adjustments. And the thing with that is the older you get, the more difficult it is to change your attitude.
Mhm.
So if you're able to start working on your attitude at an early age,
Mhm.
then you're placing yourself in a position to be successful at an early age.
Yeah.
So it's very important. That chapter may be one of the most important chapters in the book. Get your attitude straight early.
Yeah. Check what they say. Check your attitude at the door.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I tell people every day, I wake up every morning like 6:15 in the morning. I, do my daily devotion and giving God praise for allowing me to see another day. But I always tell people, I make sure I affirm who I am and make sure that I am in alignment with what today is going to bring. But again, I'm a work in progress. So today my attitude is great when I wake up, but you never know. Sometimes I have to check myself some days because people can uh, present themselves in a way that makes you question your attitude that day. So sometimes you have to really check yourself really quickly before it goes left. So I think I would agree that this chapter is one of the bigger chapters that people need to focus on about understanding you how people perceive you and how far your attitude would allow you to go. As you said, if it's a nasty attitude, then the likelihood of you moving up, yeah, you might get up there, but the likelihood of not going farther is more so a bigger percentage, right? So
Yep.
I would agree that attitude plays a big role in how we move along in this life.
Yep.
Definitely. And the last one, chapter 7, is a big one because I think we need to be talking about this when our kids are so young and then we're talking about life lessons on money.
Yes.
Big
Yeah.
thing.
The difference between being broke and poor is the lesson that Uncle Billy is teaching Ross, and he breaks it down to something very simple. Being broke is more of a temporary condition. You're
Yes.
out. He tells him, you're out with your friends. They say, "Hey, let me borrow $20 to get something to eat." He's like, "Oh man, I'm broke. I don't have that on me right now." Poor is more of a state of mind that tends to be permanent. You don't have that $20 with you. You don't have it at home. You don't have it at all.
At all.
So Uncle Billy is telling him the importance of saving money so that you're not poor. It's the antidote of being poor. It's
Mm-hmm.
okay to be broke. It's not okay to be poor. And he
Mm-hmm.
gives him some very insightful tools to help him never be poor.
Mm-hmm. Another
Yes.
mindset. It's a mindset.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
definitely.
and I always tell people 2024, my mantra is there's no room to be stagnant in 2024. It's a mindset. You got to
Mm,
keep moving. And so great lessons in these chapters. And I think that again, it's an ageless book. I think that people need to pick it up so that they can start really diving into having these conversations. I had a podcast last week, and I was talking to a gentleman about what life lessons he is teaching himself or teach has taught himself, but teaching it through his child because he has a young child, and we were talking about life lessons. And this is one of the books that I would definitely give to him because he just came home from higher learning or incarceration. And I wanted him to understand that even though you had been sitting down for a while, doesn't mean that your life stops. You
mhm,
now have legacy that is preceding you. And so I really want to gift him with this book so that he can really dive into, like I said, ageless, for him to go back and really take apart these chapters and put them into use, and but also allow it to be taught to his son that he has. So I
mm,
think it's ageless. So this is a book that is going to probably be some Christmas gifts for a lot of people because I think I really truly believe in these lessons that people need to really read them and hear it from a different perspective,
yeah,
from this perspective of a older gentleman giving life lessons that are so simple to such a young developing teenager, which
mm,
we need to catch them early uh,
right.
before they go left. So
And the lessons are also, they could be applied across cultures, which I'm very
Mhm.
excited that you're working on helping getting this translated in Arabic. The Middle Eastern countries, I travel there a lot. I really would like to get this to them and show them that, help to teach their young people and young adults. So
Yes,
very excited about that. Anybody listening could speak Arabic, it'll be in Arabic soon.
yes, very soon, very soon. We're plotting along, trying to figure out the best fit for this because we want to make sure that it is done correctly and that it's seamless, so that anybody who speaks Arabic will be able to understand it as well.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, it's colorless, I think, in so many words.
yeah.
We want to make sure that people are getting the lessons. So, with that being said, What's on the horizon? What's next? But before it's next, before we say what's next, I really want to give a gift to somebody. We want to show um, the audience your cover because it's launching. What day? What day we said this book is launching?
April 26th.
Wow, it's already April. So we got 26 days, people, right?
Yep.
26 days before this book's launches. So we are excited to show the cover of his new book. I don't want to show the old cover. Well, I could, but now I'm not going to show the old cover.
Yeah,
Do you
I'm
have
so excited with this new cover. It just brings it to life. It's like being published, I think, for the first time. So I'm very
Yeah.
excited about that.
So I'm going to show you. I'm going to take. It's going to show between us. So this is the new book cover.
Oh,
So excited about this cover. Really speaks volumes to the relationship between Ross and Uncle Billy.
yeah,
Really, really beautiful, beautiful color. And the designer who did that, KLM Designs, was phenomenal. When we presented it to her and gave her the concept, it was like, here we go. This is exactly what you envision. I'm envisioned. So
yeah,
I was excited that you were excited
yeah,
about what it looks like.
yeah,
So I think that with that new cover will bring new readers. I always tell people as a publisher, the first thing that people look at, and it's your invitation, is that cover. That
yeah,
cover is what drives people to want to say, "Let me look at what's in the inside of this book." And I'm telling you, the back is so beautiful because it seamlessly like put it all together. Like it gives you the city view from the front to the back. It's like it's seamless and it's so
yeah,
beautiful. She did an amazing, amazing job on
yeah.
this cover. An amazing
It
job.
reminded me of the Spideyverse feel to it. It made me
Yeah.
want to. I knew it was in it, and I still wanted to get it just from the cover.
Mm. So you got new people thinking about what it looks like. Well, it might be talking about Spider-Man. Let me
Right,
look at it and see it, right? But
right.
who knows, right? So it gives you that that imagination is starting to run. Like, okay, I like
Yeah,
looks like. Let me see what it's actually talking about. So I'm
exactly.
excited about this cover. So be on the lookout for this book coming April 26th. We will continue to push it out there on our platforms through allurepublishing.net, on our social media pages, which is Allure on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Is that what it's called now? TikTok or X or whatever it is.
Yeah,
It's all on those platforms. It will be out there. So if you want to pre-order those, you can do that as well. You can again go to allurepublishing.net where you can actually go ahead and pre-order those through the website. But with that being said, I know there's some other things in you, some more projects that are coming down the pipeline. So what else do you got going on?
in the immediate future, I'm coming out with a book on residential real estate investing. Residential real estate investing. And this covers everything. If you are interested in investing in real estate, this is like an investor's Bible. It talks about everything that you will need from starting an LLC to contractors to getting loans, getting funding for these type of investments, everything. That will be out probably. I'll get it to you probably next month, and
Mm-hmm.
then however long it takes for you to get it published. But
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be the immediate one.
Mm-hmm.
And in the beginning of 2025, a relationship book is coming out. It's going to be called I Did It For You: Keys to Having a Happy, Healthy, Loving Relationship.
That's
I
a
did it for you. Yeah. Yeah.
that's a mouthful. Now I know you've written before. You've written a few other books before.
Yes.
So just tell the audience a little bit about why you kind of switched gears from educational piece. Well, all of them are educational in a sense, right?
Yeah.
But going from this relationship with Uncle Billy and Ross now to a real estate. So tell the audience a little bit about your background in real estate.
Okay. So my overall background is I'm an attorney in Washington, D.C., and I'm also a real estate investor. And I like to teach, I like to write, I like to share information. So all of my books, my goal is to produce or to write entertaining yet educational pieces, regardless of the topic. So real estate is one of the things that I love. Law, I'm going to come out with a law book after that relationship book. And then I think relationships are so complex. I think that so many people struggle in relationships. I've read so much about relationships, which was the first book that I've written. So I want to be able to break these complex topics into more simplified information so people can benefit from them, they can learn from them, and they can apply them to their lives. And that's what I did with this real estate book that's coming out. I've been investing in residential real estate since 2005. So I've been doing it for almost 20 years. I've been burnt. I've lost a lot of money, but now I've made a lot of money. So I just want to share this information with the public and help anyone who desires getting into this field.
Okay. So now with the relationship book, I know you wrote a relationship book as well. So do you have that book by chance?
I do somewhere on my shelf. Yeah. Good thing I wasn't wearing shorts.
Yeah, great thing.
That happened when I was in a meeting. So it's been published twice. The first one is this Colored Water.
Mm-hmm.
Colored Water, Marriage, Involuntary Divorce, the Law, and God. And then it was published again.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what the covers look like.
Okay.
And this is one person called it a treaty. It talks about everything as far as marriage, what marriage is, involuntary divorce. It's when, as an attorney, I've learned this firsthand that when two people are married, usually one person wants to divorce and the other person does not. They're made to want it. Like if I'm married to a woman and I don't want to be in the relationship anymore, I'm going to start doing things to piss her off to where she's not going to want to be in the relationship anymore. Or I just filed for divorce and then she'd be so pissed. She's not going to try to pride or whatever would make people say, no, babe, don't do this. They say, okay, well, if you're divorcing me, let's go at it. And it's always this big struggle. So involuntary divorce is when one person decides to pull the trigger and the other person doesn't want to. It's very opposite to getting married. You know, if you're getting married, there's a proposal and there's a yes. But when you go through a divorce, it's not like, hey, do you want to get divorced? And if the person says no, then you just stay married. No, it's like we're getting divorced whether you want to or not.
Right.
So it deals with that. It deals with the legal aspect of marriage and, you know, is it a contract? Is it a covenant? What really it is? Then there's a lot of scripture based on that. A lot of churches use this book to speak to their members who are getting married or going through a divorce. Is very scripture based. And the last chapter deals with what to look for if you're not yet married and you want to decrease your chances of ever getting divorced. There's certain things that you can look at in people to determine whether or not they have that commitment gene, you know, because in marriage, you have to be committed. And some people are just not. And there's little signs that you can look for to help make the determination of whether or not you should move forward with this individual that you're contemplating marrying.
So, as someone who's written a book and who's an attorney, I'm not for sure if it's in this book, in the book Colored Waters. Does it talk about the children and what that impact is for the children when we're talking about that divorce?
Yes, there is one chapter that talks about, it's really written to government agencies
Mm-hmm.
and what they can do to help um, the impact of divorce, because divorce is oftentimes compared to as a death. You know, one person is in your life and then the other person, and one day you wake up and they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
But with death, there's so many things that the government has allowed to help that spouse. You know, if your husband dies, you get sick leave, bereavement leave, you have insurance, you know, you
Mm-hmm.
have all of these things. But if your husband decides to up and leave you, your job is not going to give you 6 weeks leave for that. You know, you don't have any insurance that's going to help pay for the bills.
Mm-hmm.
You have to try to find your husband, to sue your husband to get child support.
Mm-hmm.
So you're spending money that you could be spending to help raise your kids. So the
Mm-hmm.
government, there's a chapter in there that's giving the government some suggestions as to have some sort of financial relief, to where
Mm-hmm.
one parent says, look, peace, I'm out. That person who's left with the kids could have some sort of financial help, because as it is now, there's nothing.
This That's true. That's true. And it's interesting that you I guess because you see it in your daily life as an attorney, you see that. But it's good to have something put on paper that says that, hey, I understand this, I see this, and there's nothing there for you, but we need to make it so that it is something for you, because it is a death. It is really a death. You trying to figure out, how do I cope with this? Now I got these kids over here. What do I do next? Right.
Right.
So I truly grateful to hear that that's a part of it, because it's relationships in itself is hard, but
Yeah.
then when you got other people that are looking to you for their stability, and you don't have anything and your foundation is crumbling, it's kind of hard,
It's difficult. And as an attorney with some sort of moral compass, it's difficult for me to charge a client money when I know they're trying to do this all on their own for their kids. You know,
Hmm.
it's money. And I would always tell the other side, look, let's try to negotiate something for this family, because there's kids involved. They don't need to be paying us. They need to
Hmm.
be using that money to. So some attorneys don't care, but I'm one of those who really try to make divorces go fast. You know,
Hmm.
you don't need to be going with all these motions, all these court appearances. Let's
Hmm.
get in and out and just be done.
Hmm. Yeah, because this is a true impact. It's a lifelong impact when you're talking about divorce. Even if you're not even married, legally married, if you've been with somebody for such a period of time, it's almost like a divorce. It's just not paper. You know what I'm saying? So it's interesting to hear that side of it, and I'm quite sure that the listeners would love to be able to get their hands on that and be able to figure out how to maneuver through that situation, because in itself it's hard. It's a lot that you're talking about. It's emotionally driven, so it's a
Mm.
lot you're impacting, not just yourself but those around you, and especially your kids too. So
Yeah. This particular book, it took me 2 years to write because it's so heavily researched.
mm,
There's a chapter called Worse Than Death. And based on the research and the science, divorce is actually much worse than death, because you go through the grieving phases, the 5 grieving phases of a death. You know this person is gone and they're never coming back. But when
mhm,
you divorce, especially if you experience an involuntary divorce, you might see that spouse again with
mhm,
somebody else. And so it comes, those feelings come all over again. Then you
mhm,
have to go through litigation, and there's actually a psychological condition of going to litigation. It's
mhm,
stressful.
mhm,
So you lost your spouse and now you have to go to court. It's 2 in 1. You know, there's a finality when it comes to death. You
mhm.
know, this person is gone. There's no finality when you're dealing with a divorce.
Yeah.
And some people hope that one day their spouse will just stop and come back and say, look, and they're just living in limbo. They just
Mhm.
don't know.
Yeah. And it's sad, because then your kids are trying to figure out, well, are they going to get back together?
Yeah,
Are they not
exactly.
going to get back together? But then I saw mommy with. So they're like in between it. They don't know how, and now you got to pay for them to go see a psychiatrist, because they don't know what to expect, right? So
Right.
I'm glad that that you took your time to research it, and then put it into a book form so people can start to really understand those different aspects of divorce or involuntary divorce, because we need to see, we need to see that. And I'm grateful to hear that you as an attorney have a moral compass, because some of them don't. You're
Yeah,
like, I want the money and that's all. Give me this retainer and that's all.
yeah, that's
So
true.
yeah. So with this new relationship book, it's a flip.
Yeah,
It's a flip to what we're talking about, of course, when we're talking about divorce.
yeah,
Uh, okay, so I'm quite sure that these relationship books are going to be well received. We have so many people, especially since we're coming out of COVID, and people are now getting back into the market and trying to figure out, where do I start, and how do I do it, and how do I plant my seeds so that it can grow accordingly.
right,
Um, I know we kind of talked briefly before we came on the podcast, talking about what relationships look like, and that give and take kind of thing. And we
right.
kind of talked about a little bit about what that looks like. And so I know you mentioned that it's about making sure that you give.
Yeah,
So explain to the audience what that means.
yeah. So the title is "I Did It for You," and it talks about the greatest. There's a quote that says, "The greatest expression of love is seen in giving." If you're in a relationship with someone and they're not giving you any time, they're not giving you any gifts, it doesn't have to necessarily be monetary. If they're not listening to you, if they're not giving you their ear, if they're not giving you conversation,
Mhm,
then you could pretty much know that this person does not mean much. You don't mean much to that person.
mhm,
On the flip side, when you really do love someone, you express that by giving all that you have. Today is Easter, and we know that text that says, "For God so loved the world that he gave." He gave everything. So
mhm,
when you're in a relationship, you have to come in the mindset that you have to give.
mhm,
If you're not ready to give somebody something that they're going to ask for in a relationship, then you might not be ready to really be in a relationship.
mhm, mhm,
So that's going to be the concept of the new relationship book, is being one. It's about meeting needs, being willing to give your needs,
mhm,
and you have to know what your needs are.
mhm.
If you don't know yourself well enough to know what you need in a relationship, how can you expect somebody else to give you what you don't even know you need? So
Exactly.
you have to be able to know what your needs are, and the book is going to talk about doing little exercises so you could realize what you need.
Mhm.
As a younger person, if you're 19 or 20, chances are you don't really know what you need yet.
You
um,
barely blow your nose, so no.
right, right. So once when you know what your needs are, the second step is being able to communicate those needs,
Yeah.
right? Being able to sit down with the person and say, "I've been alive long enough, and I know that I need to have communication during the day. Little text here and there, because I freak out if I don't hear from you." Whatever it is, you have to be able to communicate that to the
Mhm,
person that you're in a relationship with. And then the other person needs to be adult and mature enough to know whether or not they're capable of giving that. They may
yeah,
not want to. They might say, "Look, you seem to be a great person, but what you're asking me for, I can't give that." So
mhm,
they say, "Okay, well, it was nice meeting you, and this has to end." Because if you're in a relationship with someone and your needs are not being met, there's only three things that's going to happen.
mhm,
Guaranteed, unequivocal. One, the person will get it somewhere else, right? They're going to say, "Okay, you're not giving me conversation. I told you what my need is. I'm going to get it from somewhere else."
mhm,
That's probably not the healthiest way to deal with it.
mhm,
The second thing that would happen is they'll just leave the relationship. They would say, "This relationship is not satisfying me." They
mhm,
may not be able to communicate why, but they'll just say, "I'm not feeling this." It's
mhm,
because they're not getting needs met. And so they'll just leave it. They'll break up with the person, they'll divorce the person, whatever it is.
mhm,
The third thing that will definitely happen is they'll fuss all the time. They'll say, "Look, I want this, I want that." They're not going to leave. for whatever reason, maybe they're bound to this person for who knows why.
Mhm.
They're not going to get it somewhere else because maybe they're a very faithful person and that's just not in them, or maybe they can't. Some people just, they would cheat if they had an opportunity, but they just don't have the opportunity. So they just sit there and they gripe and they fuss, they keep it in, and they make for a very toxic, combative relationship.
Mhm.
And at
Mhm.
the core of that is they have a need that's not being met, either because they haven't communicated it or the other person can just care less and they don't want to give it to them.
Mhm. Well, I can see that too, because a lot of times what we find, at least in my conversation with my circle of friends, what I find is that as a person of my maturity, well, I just stayed because of the kids, or I stayed because I'm just gonna stay. And
Yeah,
really and truly, you are staying for the wrong reasons. And that's what you're saying in this book is what you're going to be talking about,
right.
which is a great thing. I think again, this is uh not just geared toward, it's for both male and female, to
Definitely.
be able to understand that you should love yourself enough to want better for yourself too.
Exactly.
Um, I say it all the time. I did a book talking about affirmations and affirming who we are and loving ourselves. And self-preservation is key to survival. So I
Yes.
believe that, this book is allowing people to see their worth, and that
Mm,
they mean enough, have some substance to give to somebody else who will want to be able to give those needs to them or satisfy those needs for them. But it also has to you also have to understand what you want and what does that look like for you, and you should never settle. Why should
yes.
you settle for something that you are deserving of,
Right. Right.
so.
That happy and healthy portion.
Mhm.
If you want to be happy and healthy, you have to have a love for yourself. You have
Mhm.
to love yourself to the point where you could say, this person's not treating me well.
Mhm.
I deserve better, and walk away. So definitely the keys is going to involve loving yourself, recognizing. People talk about communication. Oh, you have to be able to communicate. Well, what are you communicating? It's
Mhm.
not just so much communicating, because you could sit down and talk to somebody for hours saying
Mhm.
nothing,
Like,
right?
absolutely
But
not.
you have to be able to communicate certain things to this person.
Mhm.
And that's one of the keys to
Mhm.
having a happy, healthy relationship.
I agree totally. We might have to talk about collaborating on a couple of chapters in that book.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But so we're saying we got another relationship book coming, and then I know we talked a little bit. You said a little bit about another book sometime in 2025 about your experience as an attorney. I can imagine the types of cases and things that you've seen that you can put in a book. Because I'm a Perry Mason girl. My grandma used to watch
There's
it.
Yeah, this book is going to be very interesting. I've been fortunate enough to have some very interesting cases. I'm going to name drop. I'm going to put some judges' names out there who I think has been very unfair. Um,
Mm,
I'm going to protect clients' names unless they want me to give their actual name. But
mhm.
this book is going to be real life cases. The ones that went well, the ones that didn't go well. I really want to push this to um, the legal minds out there,
Mhm.
because, and I'll just say this really fast. One of my mantras that I always say when I'm speaking is that you hear that, oh, the legal system is messed up. The legal system is unfair. I compare the legal system to marriage.
Mhm.
Marriage in and of itself is a beautiful institution.
Mhm.
Two people deciding to come together, to give, to love, to share till death,
Mhm.
through sickness, through health. That is a beautiful thing. But what happens in marriage? You have selfish people who enter a marriage. You have rude people. You have abusive people who enter. You have broken people
Mm.
enter into a marriage, and then you get a broken marriage. But
Mhm.
marriage in and of itself, the institution is good. The law, having studied it for so many years, it's actually a fair system. And parts that are not fair, there's mechanisms implanted to make it fair. They're called amendments, they're called
Mhm.
appeals. But when you just look at the law in and of itself, it's a very fair institution. But like marriage, you have unfair people who get a hold of it. You get
Mm,
biased people who get a hold of it. You
mhm.
get crooked people who get a hold of it. And now you have crooked outcomes of the law.
Yeah.
So I'm going to hit hard on judges who are unfair, who are biased.
Mhm.
And to an extent, it's not their fault. There's a
Mhm.
book that I have that I really love that I'm going to be using a lot in that particular book. It's called Influence, the Psychology Behind Persuasion.
Okay.
And the study shows that every human being, inherent in them, is to be biased.
Mhm.
We tend to favor our own. And they did studies with boxing and
Mhm.
judges. If there was a Hispanic judge and there was a Hispanic boxer, that judge would see the fight totally different.
Mhm.
He
Mhm.
wouldn't intentionally throw the fight for his, he would see it different. And it's because he has some sort of affinity with someone who looks like him.
Looks like him. Exactly.
And so I've seen cases where there was a Caucasian female judge, and I'm representing an African American man in a divorce. And that judge just saw it totally different. I don't hold it against her because now I see she is prone to do this because
Mhm.
she sees this lady and she sees something in her. So she's seeing it totally different.
Totally different. Mhm.
So
She's
you have to look into
perspective.
that when you're going to court. I'll tell my client, look, this is who the judge is. Maybe we want to just dismiss it and refile to get a new judge because
Mm,
we're dealing with a human who is inherently biased.
mm, mm.
Yeah.
You're dropping nuggets today, Mr. Phillips. Nuggets.
Yeah.
It's interesting because you're tackling something that whew, can be something hard, but I'm just truly grateful that you are willing to take on that role and say, "Hey, I'm going to be very open and transparent, and this is how it is," because we see it all day long. I mean, we see it,
Yeah.
you know, um, and unfortunately, it's happening every day. And
Hmm.
so being able to give those life lessons to those people who have been on the other side that are
Hmm.
not judges but been defendants, uh,
Hmm.
so that you giving them those life lessons to say, hey, this is what I see. I seen it every day. I did this every day. So I'm going to drop some nuggets so that you can see and
Hmm.
understand that this is what's going on. you
Yep.
know so
So
kudos to
that'll be late 2025. Maybe we'll talk about it. Maybe September,
you.
October. Yeah.
Yeah. So you got a lot of stuff going on, Mr. Phillips. We're gonna be busy.
Yes, we are.
Hey, I always told you when we first met, we gonna ride this bus till the wheels fall off, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But as long as it's done in a way that is going to educate and it's going to ensure people understand the whole entire picture, then I'm there to the end. You know what I'm saying? To
Yeah.
the end.
Yeah.
So with that being said, we know what projects are happening. We know that your book, The Adventures of Uncle Billy and Ross, uh, Life Lessons Made Simple, will be out April 26th. So again, please be on the lookout for that. But with that being said, is there anything that you want to leave the audience as we kind of wrap up this conversation?
I just want to first thank you for giving me the platform to talk about the books and being the publisher now. I'm so excited and pleasantly surprised about how great the experiences have been working with you, opposed to my previous publisher who basically did nothing. You're just doing so much more. So thank you so much for that. And for the listeners, just pick up the book, share it with a young person, use some of the lessons for yourself. I've written it for all ages, really. So I just hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, I think they will, and I will want to let the audience know that you will be doing some appearances because we're doing some cross country things in Indianapolis, June 28th through the 30th. We're looking at doing some stuff in Houston at the Black Book Festival in Houston, and that's in October. I believe it's October 17th to the 19th. So you'll be doing some things, but what I'm really excited about is our our first anniversary sneaker ball brunch. And it was funny because I mentioned it to you and you were like, what is that?
Yeah, I hadn't heard of that.
So we are doing I'm going to show the flyer in a little bit, but we are doing Allure made a year old in January. And of course, January 21st, it's too cold to be doing anything. So I
Mhm.
figured, let's do something where it's not too hot, not too cold, but allowing people to still be able to be comfortable. So September the 14th, 2024, we will be doing our first anniversary uh, gala, but it's actually a sneaker ball brunch. So the brunch is going to be in the North Carolina area, actually Raleigh Durham area, actually in Durham, from 11 to 3 at the Sheridan Hotel in the RTP area. I will show the actual flyer in a little bit, but I am excited about this because you have agreed to be one of the speakers
Yes.
at the event. So I'm excited about that because it gives us the opportunity to be able to showcase not just our authors, but our authors have other lives outside being writers. They have other things that they're pursuing as well. So definitely want you guys to come out to share in the experience with our authors and their milestones and what they're doing in this thing we call authorship. So I'm going to show the actual flyer really quickly, and then I will say my parting words and we'll put this to rest. So that's the actual flyer. September 14th from 11 to 3 at the Sheridan Imperial Hotel in the Raleigh Durham area, RTP. So if you have not gotten your tickets, they are on Eventbrite. So please come out and just really, you know, sponsor some sneakers, because we're actually going to be giving sneakers away to one of the local boys and girls clubs. We want to make sure that we're giving back. I always say, Allure, it's not for me. It's about other people who are wanting to get their messages out through the word of literacy. So with that being said, Mr. Solon, it has been an amazing, amazing time that I've spent with you talking about your journey into authorship. Well, actually, you've already been in authorship, but I just want to tell you thank you for really trusting Allure, because we just had a few minutes of time where we met back in February, and here we are getting ready to relaunch your book again. So thank you for those kind words, but again, trusting Allure with your babies, because your books are your babies. You want it to be in a way that it's presented and it's presented well. And of course, for me, that is number one. I want people to understand that publishing has a different look and has a different narrative. And it's not about the money. It's about really having a connection with the author, but also with those readers too. So thank you for, again, really entrusting Allure and me with your work. So we're going to go ahead and put this to bed. It's been an amazing, amazing conversation. As I said it again, as I've always said, remember, stand in your purpose. Remember who you are. Affirm who you are every day. Also, remember to love yourself, because there's only one blueprint, and that blueprint belongs to you. So we're going to say good night, good evening, have a wonderful week, all that good stuff. But until next time, we're going to say good night.
Good
Good
night.
night, everybody.